Hi, my name is Dilip Souza, and I want to talk a little bit to you about finding your own voice today, finding your own voice while writing. But I'm going to start with a wonderful tennis player, a great inspiration to me in a lot of ways, a man called John McEnroe, and this is his book. It's called You Cannot Be Serious. It's worth looking up why it's called that to me. I don't want to give it away, but it's a funny but also telling kind of story, so take a look. In his prime, in the early 1980s, John McEnroe was already being referred to as the greatest to ever play the game. In 1984, he lost only 3 matches all year, a record that still holds today. He was 25 that year and he stood on top of the tennis world, winner already of 7 Grand Slam titles, and people wondered, how many more is this guy going to win? I used to wonder that watching him. The answer? 0. For various reasons, McEnroe never came close to those 1984 heights again. And I want to suggest to you that it's that downfall, rather than his successes, that tells us more about the man. But that also pushed him to introspect, to reflect on his life and career. And that's what makes this autobiography, this book, You Cannot Be Serious, such a compelling, fabulous book. The real point here is, McEnroe did something remarkable while writing this book. Something a lot of us forget to do. He stayed true to himself. And I think that's the key to finding your own voice as you write. Be true to yourself. That means warts and halos and everything else in between. And that's what McEnroe gives us. He writes, in some point in this book, he writes, I know people have seen me as a spoiled, loudmouth, ill-tempered crybaby. I don't deny that I've acted that way a lot. There was a time when my head was so big it barely fit through the door. Think of that. He's confessing to quite something when saying those words. But he also says, and this is the stuff that I like to read about, being a little bit of a tennis player myself, he writes, I began to look at the court differently, as a mathematical equation almost. The angles were everything. It wasn't just about hitting a slice and approaching the net. Sometimes you should slice it deep, but sometimes you could come in and slice it off the court. Use the angles. He actually italicizes those last 3 words, showing how important that was to him. So think of that. McEnroe tells us frankly about the greatest criticism he got, that people still remember him for, that he was a brat while on the court. But equally frankly, he tells us about how he thinks he saw the court differently than any other player, with angles that needed to be exploited while playing in an almost mathematical sense. I love that mathematical, because again, I have a little bit of an interest in mathematics. I love it that a tennis player actually talks about mathematics in this way. So in any case, in being himself like this and in other ways, McEnroe finds his voice in this book. So why is that so important when you write? Because otherwise your book is like everyone else's. And why should anyone buy yours? Why should anyone be interested in your voice if it's like everyone else's? Why would I buy John McEnroe's book if it is like every other tennis player's book on the market? So you want your readers to understand and care about what you write. And maybe you even want them to care about you. So how do you go about developing your own voice? Oddly enough, I would suggest the oldest trick in the book. Read some more. Read widely. Ask yourself as you read, why does this book resonate with me? Or maybe why does it not resonate with me? Don't be afraid to copy techniques or copy phrases from writers whom you admire. We all do that to some degree or the other when we start, but also all through our writing careers. And out of that wealth of copying, eventually we develop our own particular personality when we write. We develop our own particular voice. So take me. I like to think I've been influenced by John McEnroe's unflinching honesty about himself in this book. I like to think I've been influenced by Elmore Leonard, the wonderful crime writer, his feel for dialogue when he writes. Naresh Fernandez, his journalistic skills are on display in this book and many of his other writings. The book called Taj Mahal Foxtrot. Then there is Martin Gardner, whose mathematical precision and logic I am a great admirer of. And then finally, I like to think I was influenced by the quiet humor of my father, who wrote this book about his career. How true all that is, the extent to which all these guys influenced my writing, is something my readers would have to tell me. I'd like to think that it's part of my writing, but you guys will have to tell me that. But I know anyway that they made their way into my writing in one way or the other, to some degree or the other. Mix it all together with whatever I learned about writing in school or in college, and my several years on the job, and you get whatever my writing is today. You get my voice. And that's what I like to think is in my latest book, Deoliwalas, with my co-writer Joy Ma. And yes, I must try always, like I said before, like I said about John McEnroe, to be too true to myself. There are times when it can be really painful to do that. But there are times when it brings out the joy or the happiness in you, that happens too. And I know that that's what marks my writing out and makes it different from other people's writing. And that's why it's so important. So if someday you're reading me and you suddenly think, hey, that reminds me of John McEnroe, let me be frank. I wouldn't be surprised, and I might even be a little flattered. Though let me also say this, I'd be even more flattered if you saw me playing tennis on the tennis court one day and thought, hey, that reminds me of John McEnroe. So thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed that, and go ahead and do a lot of writing. Bye.